Hi, and welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Arun Chaudhary, and this is another of our alternate week study content episodes. Every other episode, we have a listening section, a watching section, something where we take a primary piece of material and actually watch it together and discuss it. But actually, there is so much going on in the world, and we have been so dominated on the show by the war in Ukraine and by the elections in France that the show's own Forrest, Lovette, wanted to do a global news rodeo centering on things going on in some other spots. And so we are going to do that first. And here is your Global News Rodeo.
This is the Global News Rodeo with Arun Chaudhary and Forrest, Lovette.
Hi, and welcome to your Global News Rodeo, a roundup of world events as curated by the show's own Forrest, Lovette. Let's go. Item 1. Viva la Presidente. Recall keeps Mexican president in power. Jacopo is reporting President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO, has won Mexico's recall election vote. In the first election recall in Mexican history, López Obrador garnered over 15 million votes, which was over 93% in favor of him remaining in office. The surprisingly strong support was more than the official vote total in the 2018 election. AMLO and his party Morena opened the door for direct democracy when they proposed a referendum in the last presidential campaign. With the decision, AMLO will be allowed to complete his 6-year term until 2024. Although, for the referendum to remain binding, the turnout threshold must be at least 40%. Given the actual turnout of just 17%, critics say the law is at risk of being a dead letter, which prevents direct democracy but lacks any legitimate legal authority. Furthermore, any attempts at electoral reform will be challenged by the country's conservative National Electoral Institute, or the INE. Look, I mean, good news so far as it goes, but we need to keep pushing. It's not enough to elect people who represent you. These days, you actually have to do a lot to keep them there. And that's going to smoothly take us into Item 2. Pack your bags. Khan removed his Pakistan PM. Look, I think, Forrest, the pun relies on me saying Pakistan and not Pakistan. And I'm not trying to be like somebody who aggressively says pronunciations of things correctly, but I don't want to start off on the wrong foot with a pun like that. That's kind of where I'm coming down on that, okay? Democracy Now! Is reporting that Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has been ousted in a no-confidence vote on Monday. The Pakistani parliament voted to remove Khan and replace him with opposition leader Shehbaz Sharif, who editorial, I will say, is a charming character who is always under clouds of investigation along with folks in his family, and they are a huge mess. The decision came last month after Khan attempted to dissolve the parliament, which the nation's Supreme Court ruled to be illegal. Khan lashed out afterwards, blaming the removal on a plot of U.S.-backed regime change. Tube Saeed, a member of the left-wing Amwai Workers' Party, provided some perspective of past removals of PM, saying it's usually been done by the military intervention, so it's a good step forward in terms of democracy in Pakistan, that this was not done through a military dictatorship or military intervention, but done through a vote of no confidence which went through the parliament or the National Assembly itself. I will say, and I don't follow Pakistani politics like I should, but I am around some, smart, engaged folks who do. And I know that a lot of people feel like even if this wasn't directly done by the military, that it was done at the behest and of that segment of political pressure in Pakistani society, and that people do feel very strongly that there is at least if not a direct and overt push by the U.S., certainly people who they have been helping throughout the years are folks pushing for this change. And so I think you're going to see, who is a fairly popular prime minister coming up against forces that normally were able to kind of enforce these kind of regime changes. I mean, think of a place like Bolivia. I don't think people can make these kinds of things stick anymore. We saw in Kosovo, Albin Kurti, who was removed by Trump in many ways. We saw him come back much stronger in the next election. We saw in Bolivia a kind of coup get uncooed. The power structure of the world is more multipolar all the time, and I think whether you are Russia, whether you are America, whether you are any of folks who are used to that bipolar world, you need to get used to the fact that it is harder for you to project power than it used to be. That's what I want to say. I got a long way to say that, but that's what I wanted to say. Item 3, like Muppet Babies, but with more executions. Another Marcos in the Philippines. And I do have to say that I actually wrote that headline, and I'm very proud of it. And it's important to me to let you know that I wrote it and Forrest didn't, because I am a small, petty man. A small, petty man. NPR is reporting the son of late and longtime Filipino dictator Ferdinand Marcos is now running for president. 64 years old, Ferdinand Bong Bong Marcos Jr. is showing a slight lead in the polls for next month's election. The emergence of yet another Marcos to the national spotlight is polarizing, energizing supporters of his father while causing opponents to worry about the nation's fragile democracy. Adding fuel to the familiar fire, the daughter of outgoing President Rodrigo Duterte, Sara Duterte, is running for vice president. Right? It's getting good, folks. If elected, Marcos Jr. will attempt to restore the legacy of the family name, and under his father's 21-year rule, the country was placed under martial law for almost a decade. That regime was blamed for 74,000 warrantless civilian arrests and over 4,000 deaths, along with suppression of free speech and the persecution of political opponents. And, you know, we can't say enough. What happens in the Philippines is America's problem forever, because we messed that place up good and forever, even at the same time as pretending that we had no imperial ambitions. The Filipino War is something, you know what, we should actually do a whole thing on this. We should get somebody on and we should really talk about this. It is one of the most sinful chapters in American history, and it's something that we learn very, very little about. And actually the kind of where it intersects with arms and armament and manufacturing of weapons is extremely interesting. We will do this. We will do this.